Hey guys, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. This is the market recap for week ending October the 26th. Sorry, it's a little bit late. Usually try to get that out on Sunday or Monday, but all the same, let's give it a whirl here. Last week saw Packers enter the week with offer lists pretty much for the most part unchanged with the week prior, both in the number of selections they're offering as well as pricing. It did appear to be a few more native steers being offered, as well as jumbo and super jumbo heavy Texas steers and branded steers, which we've been talking about now going on 2-3 weeks. So as far as interest, the consensus of the trade was they were leaning to the thought that they were going to see some decent interest last week, especially considering there was a nice round of business the week prior. There was a fair number of pieces of business that didn't get concluded, because, whether it be for price, for shipments, or whatever the objection would be. But still, everybody thought, okay, we're going to see some decent follow-up. Unfortunately, it failed to come to fruition. It got off to a slow start. The market couldn't get any traction. It continued throughout the week, and at the end of the day, popular opinion is that very unlikely that there was a week's worth of product sold, leading to thoughts that this week's export report, we're going to see smaller sales numbers than we did the week prior. As far as trading levels, I would say no better than steady for a lot of popular selections. Native steers all over the board. About a $4 to $5 per piece difference, depending on the producer, depending on the weight average, what plant it was coming out of, and how many the prospective buyer was buying. So that market looks like there's a bit of disconnect right now. Jumbos traded. They tried getting steady, but I would call that market off probably at least $1, maybe even $2, depending on the selection. So. End of the day, big Packer market ended the week on a soft, steady note. Cowhides, same story as before. Offer lists come in, for the most part unchanged. Most everybody left all the selections they were offering the same as the week prior, as well as prices. A couple of the larger producers were laying claims to having decent sales the week before, tried to raise prices, and unfortunately, they met a considerable amount of resistance to higher pricing. So, like big Packer hides, interest last week didn't come to fruition like many people were thinking, because, again, cowhide producers enjoyed a decent week of business the week prior. Some business not concluded they thought would spill into the last week. It did not come to happen. So that market, I think it is fully steady, because producers refuse to take any less, but producers in the same breath cannot get any more. As far as the harvest, last week it came in at 633. That's up 8,000 over the week prior. It's in line with levels of a year ago. A lot of talk going on about the harvest these days, because with the margins that Packers are making, it would make sense to see something more of a 650, maybe north of 650. But the fact of it is, it's hovering around 620 to 630. Tends to indicate that maybe supplies of cattle are a little tight here for the moment. Packers certainly don't want to disrupt the live market, thus take it away from their margins, even though they're seeing some great demand for box beef. Prices well above a year ago. So we'll keep an eye on that harvest for you. The export report last week, as mentioned earlier, 622,000 wet salted hides sold, one of the largest numbers in the last couple of months. One of the larger numbers for the year. I think it's top 5 using my memory, which seems to get a little shorter every year. But that was pretty decent. Shipments were not too terrible too, because 536 on the shipments. Sales of wet blue 114, which is better than it has been. But keep in mind that wet blue soak is 165,000 in my estimate every week. So the folks producing blue, in my opinion, are not keeping pace with their production, and that's why you've seen that outstanding sales of wet blue drop from 1.2 down to about 750,000. So these guys producing the blue don't have near as strong sold forward position as they've been advertising for the last several weeks. So shipments on wet blue were 137, and again, that's okay. It's not enough to clear production. So Quick trip around the world going into Europe. You have two of the very large automotive producers sharing with their suppliers that they are going to cut back soaks. One of them said they're going to cut back soaks substantially starting November as well as December, and with a caveat that they may even have a further reduction come first quarter of 2019. Another large competitor sent out a letter here last week saying they're cutting their soaks in Germany by 50%. I hear from sources that their other facilities around the world are still going at normal production, but I think that just reflects that car sales in Europe have gone to heck in a handbasket. You're seeing requirements cut. I hear from a reliable source that one of the larger U.S. auto tanners business is off substantially as well, and they are going to be cutting their soaks. So that's not good news with the number of native steers for sale. Certainly not good news for male hides and heavier ox heifers in Europe. There's already plenty of cow hides for sale over there from what I'm hearing. Folks in Europe who have hides to sell, pressing to get things done and struggling to sell, especially if they want steady levels. If they want to take, discounts of $4, $5, $6, yeah, there's all kinds of business to be had. They just haven't come to the realization to resign themselves to the fact that they have to take those levels to get things sold. In Brazil, no change. Lots of wet blue for sale. Packers, struggling to hold their fresh hide prices steady. Everybody wants to pay less because they're trading wet blue at lower prices. Lots of rumors that there's been lower levels accepted on wet blue, especially if the buyer can take some of the number 2s and number 3s down there. So Australia, no change in the entire market down there from what I hear. However, the softer tone of the global market is certainly making it difficult for them to hold their market steady. So end of the day, that's it, folks, this week. As far as I'm concerned, I still remain of the opinion there appears to be a very limited upside, if any, to this market, in my opinion. I think there is much more downside. That's why if I was a producer, I'd keep selling. So that's your recap. Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. Check out my website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. I do offer 14-day free trials. Until next week, thanks.